Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to cover compiling a Unity build and submitting that to the depot. So for IND2, for this point we've got our project up on the depot and we've also added the IND229 folder into the depot. The last remaining piece is compiling a build and submitting that into the compiled folder for the project setup. So before we go into Unity, we're going to find our project settings. And then inside our project settings, we're going to find the editor build settings. Let's go ahead and check out this file, add it to our change list. The reason why we're checking it out is because we're going to edit and modify this file. So remember, anytime you're changing a file, whether it's in Unity or Unreal or Visual Studios, whatever the program may be, always go ahead and check it out first and then save it and submit it back to the depot. So make sure you have your IND2 experiments loaded in your hierarchy, and we can open up the build settings. So File, Build Settings, and you'll see these are our build settings here. So make sure that you have your build settings in this order. It should be by default, it should appear like what you're seeing here: menu, credits, outpost, and then this dummy scene. So with the IND2 experiment scene open, we can hit Add Open Scenes. Also, we could drag the scene from our project and drop it into the build settings. Just make sure it's at the bottom of the list, right? Make sure that every scene you want to be additively loaded with the outpost is below the level, this dummy scene here. It says level scenes below this scene. This is the same process you're going to use for level design as well as PNP3, where you're adding multiple scenes to this list below this dummy scene here. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit build, and I'm going to navigate to my workspace and month and then the section, and now inside the compiled folder we're going to go ahead and make a new folder. And if you don't have your compiled folder in your workspace, make sure you come to Perforce, find your compiled folder, and find this get me file and get latest revision of that to copy this folder structure to your computer. So back in Unity, inside my compiled folder, I'm going to right click and make a new folder. I'm going to name this last name, first name, and select this folder. So the reason why this is a very important step is because I'm selecting this folder to be the location where the build gets created. So when Unity finishes, it's going to create a data folder, an executable, several different files that are very important to be in one easy to get to place for us to test the build and submit to Perforce. So I'm going to go ahead and let this executable build. Alright, now that the build's finished, you'll see Unity is going to pop open a File Explorer window for us. You'll also see in your console, come back into Unity here, your console will tell you when the build has been completed. Alright, you'll see down here build completed with result of succeeded. But with the File Explorer window open, you'll see all those files I was talking about. You'll see this mono folder, the data folder, the executable, this exe, and these DLL files. It's very important that all of this gets added to Perforce. So that way we can test your build successfully that you've submitted. So before you even submit to Perforce, always just open up the build and test it. Make sure it runs successfully, make sure it includes your experiment scene, and you're happy with what you're about to submit. So I've included a checkpoint for you, so you can go ahead and hit escape, and you can see the IND2 experiments checkpoint, and you can easily jump over there for testing purposes. You can also access that in the editor, but you can see here our build also includes our experiment scene. So I'm going to go ahead and exit that. So definitely make sure you take the time to test your work, not just for project setup, but all of your activities you'll be working on. And now we want to go back into Perforce, refresh our workspace, and you see this folder with your name and all these files inside of it. Make sure you select your folder and mark it for add. Okay, I'm going to add it into the same change list with my build settings. That's fine. So I'm going to submit and say submission for project setup. Okay, when you're working on your assignments and you're submitting your build, it's going to always be submission for fill in the blank, some description of your activity or your assignment that you worked on. So always remember that changeless description. Alright, so submission for project setup. Now I'm going to submit. So that's including both our build settings and the entire compiled folder. So I'm just going to give this a minute here to go ahead and finish submitting. And when it submits and goes through, you'll see your files in the depot. So once this finishes, I'll see my folder in the depot. So keep in mind with this build that we're submitting, we're going to replace this build after each milestone. So you're going to mark for delete on your compiled folder and then mark for add your new build. Every time you make a new build, you're going to delete the one on the depot and add in a new version. Okay, now that our changeless went through, you can see we have our folder in the compiled folder, which includes the mono, the data, the executable, our INI file, the crash handler exe, and these two DLLs. All are very important to be on the depot. So just to show you, if I go ahead and show in Explorer and I delete my data folder, for example, and try to run my exe, I get that error saying there should be a scraps data folder next to the executable. If I delete my Unity Player DLL and try to run the exe, I'm getting errors because there's no Unity Player DLL. So all those files are very important that they exist not only in your workspace but on the depot. So what I want to cover now is just testing what's on the depot, and after you submit your assignment, to make sure you've submitted it correctly. So I'm going to delete my folder from my File Explorer window. Then I'm going to come back over to Perforce and Get Revision, and then select the Get Latest and Force operation. This is going to copy what's on the depot back into my workspace. So by doing this, you're just triple checking and making sure that what you submitted to the depot actually went through successfully and you didn't forget your data folder or any of the other extra files that are needed to run the exe. So now that that's finished, you can see down at the bottom the files were updated. I'm going to show in Explorer. My exe is back on my workspace, and I'm just going to double click on it again and run the exe, making sure that what's on the depot is exactly what I'm happy with and I'm ready for it to be graded. So you can see there again, I have my experiment scene connected to my outpost. Alright, so that is compiling a build, submitting it to Perforce, and then testing your work.